What's good, Joe? I'm Miles Johnson. I'm the founder and host of Real Talk with Miles Johnson, and this is our first YouTube video. I'm so excited to bring out this new content for y'all. It's been in the works for a little bit. Now, I didn't want to make this channel until I had all the necessary equipment and just have everything in order to have the best content out for y'all. This podcast is going to talk about all sports, whether it's soccer, basketball, football, baseball, boxing. It's going to talk about all sports, and we're going to tap into some social justice issues as well. So be sure to tune in for that. But man, this channel is there's not going to be a limit to what we talk about here, right? We going to have some great guests on here, and I just appreciate y'all for riding with me. And man, we going to get right into it. So Zlatan Ibrahimovic told LeBron James that he needs to stay out of politics. I mean, he said that last week, and here's what he said. LeBron James is phenomenal at what he's doing, but I don't like it when people with some kind of status and they do politics at the same time as what they are doing. I mean, do what you're good at. So Zlatan, he's not just any guy talking. I'll give him that. Right? This guy in his field at soccer, he's one of the greatest goal scorers, one of the greatest players of all time. He's the greatest Swedish player of all time. So you gotta give that guy his respect. That at least he's talking. He's talking about LeBron as a guy that is one of the greatest athletes. In his field. And I don't agree with what Zlatan's saying. And we're gonna get into that a little bit too. But we gotta But Zlatan, he's all-time great in his field, so he kind of has he can't like say that, but I kind of see where he's coming from, given the fact that he's also has like the same status that LeBron has. But he's flat out wrong. Because just because your profession isn't politics does not mean you can't talk about politics. If you're educated on politics, right? If you have people talking about politics that are lawyers, doctors, janitors, librarians, like whatever your profession is, if you know politics, if you're educated on it, it's free speech. You can say whatever you want to, right? Just because he's a basketball player, just because he's got this status, doesn't mean that he can't talk about the social issues that he went through as a little kid, for sure. Because before LeBron was this big star, he was a regular black kid in America. He was a regular black kid in America, right? A lot of people forget that LeBron ain't jumped out the womb a superstar, right? He was a normal kid until he had the Sports Illustrated thing when he was around like 16 years old. But he's lived some of the he has definitely experienced some of the issues that other black kids have faced, and he wants to use his platform to uplift the black community. I got no problem with him doing that as long as he's educated in that. That's all the problem. That's my only stance on it. In terms of LeBron talking about politics and all that. As long as you're educated, I got no problem. Now it's weird. I mean, it's not weird, but we've kind of seen a shift we've had guys like Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods. They're obviously all-time greats, probably the GOATs of their fields, but they did not talk about politics. In this day and age, in this social media era, you gotta talk about politics, right? That's basically what it's kind of been, right? Guys like LeBron, Chris Paul, other NBA players have really led this movement of players. Not to say I'm not going to just shut up and dribble, just like stay silent about what's going on. And I respect that. I respect a guy talking about, the issues that's going on, rather than somebody that doesn't talk about it and just and is just worried about what he's, just worried about his brand and all of that. Right. But on the other side, I feel as a society, we kind of put this expectation for athletes, entertainers, celebrities to talk about politics when they don't know what they're talking about, right? We see a lot of celebrities talk about politics, talk about Black Lives Matter, whatever, and we know they don't know what they're talking about. Some people they can talk about politics and have the other profession. Other people, they can't do both because they aren't educated and they just sound like a fool, right? I remember Dave Chappelle in his skit, 846, right? It was right after the George Floyd killing, and Don Lennon said something about him not saying nothing.
So now all of a sudden, This nigga expects me to step in front of the streets and talk over the work these people are doing as a celebrity.
Dave Chappelle is like, what am I to say something? What? Why would people want to hear their favorite comedian talk about this stuff? I'm just like, yo. Now I totally agree with him, but I totally agree with Dave Chappelle too, in that standpoint, like, dog, what you expect your comedian to talk about politics, that's not even what he does, right? That's not even what he does. So it gets to it's a fine line between athletes showing that that they recognize what's going on, but at the same time knowing like, all right, I'm not educated. I'll rather have people that's on the sidelines or that have really been on the forefront of this social justice movement to really talk about this instead of myself when I'm not really in the movement for real. That's why I can't wait to have my guest Devin Perkins on here. Devin Perkins is a Jersey native who's been organizing in his own community for several years, specifically related to social racial justice issues. He's the founder of the New Jersey organization Black Men United, and Nev works to bring about change in his community through serving the people while building and promoting unity. He's a senior at New Jersey City University and a youth mentor for Hudson County. So I'm about to bring my man Devin Perkins on. We're going to get right into the interview. Let's get it. What's going on, yo? So I got my man Devin Perkins on here. What's up, Devin?
Peace, bro, Miles. I'm glad to be here, man. Absolutely.
I appreciate you for coming on. Can you give a little insight on what you do as well with activism in New Jersey and all that?
Absolutely. So I founded an organization called Black Men United. It's a Pan-African organization. And, we do revolutionary survival programs in our neighborhoods, making sure that people got resources and things they need, dealing with the houseless community. Also, advocating against social justice issues and working on the ground from protests to just building with the community, doing different initiatives. We had a series of community cleanups this summer. We also be focused on education and, just like teaching our people about our history and about our culture, as well as our political and our freedom struggles and, the different countries in the African diaspora, and just trying to build Black love and unity, man. Absolutely.
For sure, for sure. Now, what made you get into activism?
Absolutely. So, I would say that I've been interested, or I've always been passionate about the people's struggle for a long time. But in 2016, almost 5 years ago now, I had lost my brother to a gun violence incident. And that was a real traumatic incident for me. It touched me and impacted me deeply. And I had a lot of, I had a lot of rage and anger in me at that time. You know what I mean? I needed a outlet or a way to, alleviate some of that rage in a productive fashion. So I started reading a little bit more critically than I used to read in the past. You know what I mean? And that kind of helped me like in my analysis of the situation, because we tend to look at situations in a vacuum and not really see all the outside circumstances that's involved in it. So, once I started to do that critical read and I kind of went down the rabbit hole, and then the study became rigorous and intensive. And then I kind of came out of that, not out in a sense that I'm not still reading, because, we read every day, but I kind of evolved in a sense where I started looking at the situations like, okay, this happened, but what was X, Y, and Z that led it to happen? You know what I mean? Because gun violence just don't happen in a vacuum. Like what happened in 8th grade when a student stopped showing up to class and the teacher didn't really care, so they ain't inquire about the family situation. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like just examples and things like that. I started to go deeper, and that just made me realize that I'm really passionate about this stuff, so I should get involved. Huh?
No, for sure. And I mean, that's the whole reason why I had you on this episode, because I want to have nobody talking about this, talking about LeBron and activism, all this, athletes talking about politics and sports, with somebody that's not really in the fight for a kind of a little problem that I have with athletes, is that I guess, well, athletes and entertainers is that we put a lot of pressure, the media does, we put a lot of pressure on athletes and entertainers to talk about what's going on with racial issues, social issues, all of this. but that's not necessarily their job. Like that's not what they do day in and day out. There's people on the sidelines that, that this is really their job. Like they really are with Black Lives Matter, whoever, like, this is really their job. So my whole stance on it was, I'll let LeBron. I mean, it's okay if he wants to, talk about social justice issues or whatever. I know he obviously has made the I Promise School, and he's done good stuff for the community. But in terms of him being that voice that we should all look up to, or he's the face of like a movement or something like that. It's far from that for real. And I think, like, even like with in the past, when we say with in the past with other athletes like Michael Jordan or Tiger Woods, we kind of look down on them because they wasn't really that active in talking about social issues and all that. So I commend Braun for that. But in terms of like looking at him as like this big activist that's really in it all the time, it's really not it. And I kind of feel like it's a little bit insulting to people like yourself, that are really fighting for social issues every day, that this is really what they do. And it kind of like and then y'all a little bit kind of like, overlooked. And a guy like LeBron um, is kind of like the face of the movement a little bit, which isn't really right. But the media and everybody really tries to paint out a picture.
Right. And bro, you hit so many nails on the coffin with that. I don't even know where to start. I think to even engage that, we got to understand that we live in a different time period. Like we a long way from the Muhammad Ali's, from the Jim Browns, from the Bill Russells, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbars, the folks that was playing their sports but still understood what was going on and felt comfortable speaking on it, felt like it was their right. You know what I mean? Those
Hmm.
type of situations, they don't happen so often. Like rarely do you get a Colin Kaepernick nowadays. And I think that's because of the increase in capital that these athletes make. You make so much money, and therefore you so accountable to so many different situations that you might not want to speak or step on toes. So you know what I mean? I respect Braun being in the ultimate position of the NBA, basically the face of the NBA, the face of the black male athlete, and still having the desire to, to speak out and do that. But you know what I mean? One thing we got to do as African people in the struggle is that we don't speak on things we uneducated upon. So
Hmm.
if you don't have that specific understanding on a particular subject, then you shouldn't feel comfortable talking about it. I'm not about to get into a debate with Braun on hoops because Braun is the GOAT of hoops. You know what I'm saying? That's just proper protocol. You check in, you do your study, you know what I mean? You learn from people and then you move on. I think the issue with the media that you brought up, and that was a great point, is that the media automatically forces those people to be in the spokespersons when, like you said, we got people in other communities doing the work, but that's a specific reason though. They want you to look towards LeBron or anybody else they try to force in that hot seat to, be the voice of activism, because there's a certain level that they can control what that speech is. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And at a different time period, when we spoke about the Muhammad Ali's and the Jim Browns, we had the Malcolm X's or we had the MLKs, and we in a different period where those type of people, once you even start showing that type of political consciousness on that level and that devotion to the people, they going to work to get you up out of here. You know what I mean? So the media is comfortable with having sports people play activists here and there, but not really showing the real work of activists because they don't want to put that narrative out there.
Now, what was your thoughts on the NBA boycott? All of that, how it transpired. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Do you feel like they could have done more with all that? Talk about that.
Absolutely. In the beginning, when it first popped off and the raw energy was there, and you seen players, just walking off the court, you seen Kenny Smith, walk off the set, like it was real. The energy was raw. You could tell it was being led by them. There, I had intense respect for it, bro, because at the same time, we could speak about the wealth of NBA players and things like that, but at the end of the day, they are workers, and they're
Yeah.
in an oppressive system as well. Like the NBA, the NFL, like these sports systems, like they're oppressive systems. So they have power to take back in terms of the workers' relationship to the bosses and things like that. So I was extremely excited for it. You know what I mean? The NBA serves as a place for inspiration for a lot of Black people. And I thought, seeing them take that stance would encourage more everyday folk to really tap into what's going on and be like, okay, like if the guys is not hooping, it must be serious. You know what I mean? So I was excited for that. And then you get the NBA Players Association go sit down and go have a chat with Obama. And then all of a sudden, they just got a hoop again. And I was disappointed, man. I thought they got steered down stupid lane. And I thought they should have just kept it organic in terms of the fact that the players don't want to play. Let's get the players to sit down with organizers. Let's develop real relationships. Let's get some demands. But, they basically got told to just be quiet and dribble. And they went along with it, led by Chris Paul and LeBron.
See, here's what I say with that. I say I was for them playing simply because if they aren't playing basketball or like those guys, like if they aren't playing basketball or nothing like that, like that's like what they do. So it's like that's the platform that they can use. So whether it's them talking about issues and all of that, I feel like they had to play ball because if they didn't, maybe it could have. It definitely would have if they didn't, if they didn't play, it would have brought a lot of attention. But I guess if they were to stop playing basketball, then we would need other people to step up or like the media to highlight other people besides like the basketball players because at that point it's like somebody else has to take charge simply because I don't know. I don't think the basketball players really most of them are most of them they play basketball since they was like 4 or 5 years old and that's all they know. So it's like them not playing ball, that's probably like this is something that they've never done before. And them playing basketball is still giving them a platform to talk with, say what they want to talk about or all of that, and giving them a platform, because if they don't have that platform, nobody's really gonna listen to them.
True. And one quick point on that before we move on. In Rome, the reason they had the great big arenas and the cathedrals and the events that went on in there was to serve as a distraction for all of the social injustice issues that took place on the sidelines. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter that slavery is going on when if every Sunday you got, warriors and lions fighting to the death. And that's an example to show what we have with the NBA. If we look at the climate of, and I don't want to condense this to a particular like time period because the struggle is ongoing for life, but if we look at the summer and like just the trajectory of what was going on with different protests and actions in the summer and how it was moving, it was hundreds of thousands of people outside, millions. Once they brought back sports in terms of the relationship to the pandemic, you started to see a decline in support from people, actually paying attention to the movement, because we was in such a unique particular space where you didn't have these distractions that we know as sports. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, cool, hoop's not going on right now. I gotta pay attention to what's going on with my people. You know what I'm saying? But once LeBron back dropping 30, it's like I care about that, but I got all this going on. You know what I mean? So like, in a sense, I agree with you for the fact that to play would have been ideal for them to get their platform out. But in terms of, the benefit of the people,
yeah, overall, I'll give you that. Mm-hmm.
Strike would have been much more impactful.
I appreciate you for for coming on here, man, taking your time out your day to come on here, talk to me. I appreciate you, bro.
Absolutely, bro. My pleasure, bro. Anytime.